Hi everyone. I'm here at St. Anne Church. I thought I would do a little change up on our faith formation posts during the week and do a little bit on the art and architecture at the two churches. And since I'm here at St. Anne's with my office, I thought I could start with St. Anne's Plus. I had a lot of pictures taken of art and architecture at both churches way back during COVID, so that I could do little presentations on pieces and parts of it. Realize that I'm not an expert in all this. I don't have any kind of degree or background in architecture or art, for all that matter. I've got a big science background in my schooling and training over the years. But a little studying can bring a lot of stuff to it. At St. Anne's, though, one of the most prominent features you've got here are the murals located on the ceiling. And so what I'll do over the next few weeks, we have 8 total murals. So the next 8 weeks or so, depending on what's going on otherwise, I will try to post a little video on these murals and give you a little bit of background on them, the saints that are depicted in them, and then some of the background picture in the murals. So let's take a look at that right now. I'm going to start in here at St. Anne's right up above me, which is the west side of the church toward the plaza, and then the south side of the church, which is toward Baker Street. And that's the first one will be the mural of St. Francis of Assisi. And we just celebrated his feast day back on October 4th. I think it fell on a Sunday or something like that. I have to look back at the calendar. So we didn't actually have a Mass with him as the focus of it, but regardless of that, his feast day just passed. So here we are. Here is the mural of St. Francis located in St. Anne Church, and we see St. Francis of Assisi prominently in the middle of the actual mural itself. In the background, we see the church, San Damiano of Assisi, and that was the church that St. Francis was told to rebuild, or that's what he at least assumed when he received the vision and the message to rebuild my church. It was actually a lot bigger of a task than that, but that's it. But that's an image of that San Damiano church. In the foreground, we see to the left two of the faithful that St. Francis is possibly preaching to. I always like to think that maybe, just maybe, that's St. Clare depicted in that video as well, although I can't find anything that would substantiate that guess. On the other side, I'd always thought that two of those monks that are depicted should be Brother Giles and Brother Juniper, who were close members of his community that he dealt with. And Brother Giles actually has an interesting story about him that would take a little time to kind of pan out. But as I was doing a little research on St. Francis, I came up with the idea that there were 3 other brothers that might be important. Brothers Leo, Rufino, and Angelo. Leo, Rufino, and Angelo, maybe in the order that you see them there. Both of those 3 were part of the original 11 or 12 of his first disciples that joined with him in developing his Franciscan order, and some of them actually were present with him when he went to Rome to ask for the actual startup of his order. One of them, and it was St. Rufino, was present when he first received the stigmata, which in the idea of St. Francis had the stigmata, the wounds of Christ displayed on his body for part of his life. And if you look at that right hand that's raised, you can kind of see a nail mark on there. So you've got that all going on in this. Notice that the beatitude that's depicted is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And how appropriate is that for poor in spirit to be associated with St. Francis, who started out as a rich young man. He actually served in a local army and was captured and spent time in prison where he had a faith conversion while he was in prison. And then when he came out, he gave away all his earthly wealth and became essentially a beggar. And in fact, when he was buried, they say that Francis was wearing a borrowed bit of clothing that he was wearing. So St. Francis then is the patron saint of animals, patron saint of ecology, and the patron saint of Italy, along with St. Catherine of Siena. And he's recognized obviously for his deep love for nature and for all living creatures. And that includes humans as well. So we can't kind of discount that with him. He was born 1181 or 1182, we're not entirely sure. And he died in October of 1226. What's interesting, though, is that he was canonized only 2 years later in 1228. St. Francis had that call to bring the gospel to all God's creatures. And so he spent a lot of time trying to get out of Italy to go to various places, including France, and he'd wanted to go to the Middle East. And he was able to journey to Egypt, where he spoke to Sultan al-Kamil, who was impressed by him and gave him permission to visit the sacred places in the Holy Land. It's also said that St. Francis brought back our tradition of the Stations of the Cross. The Pope Gregory the Ninth actually asked Francis to come back from the travels that he was on because of upheaval in Italy in faith. And so they wanted Francis there to be kind of a central figure in bringing that about. So that winds up our little presentation on the first mural, St. Francis of Assisi. Stay tuned. There'll be more. Looking forward to seeing you then.